Hi, this is a tutorial on how to bring in Google Earth terrain into SketchUp 3D. So what I've chosen to do as an example is Lombard Street in San Francisco because it has a steep incline. So I'm in Google Maps. I'm going to turn on the, the satellite imagery down here. And I'm gonna zoom in on Lombard Street. I think I lost my spot. It says Lombard Street, but I don't see it. It's very recognizable, or at least it's not the right spot at Lombard Street because it's very winding. Uh, this is the image of it, but for some reason it's not. Oh, I guess that is there. Okay, I just didn't see it for some reason. Big thing that I need to do is all these words and these ghost overlays. I need to get rid of those. So I'm going to go to hover over this button, this map button, click on more right here, and turn off labels. So that will clear up all the words. And I can collapse that. So here's Lombard Street, and if I hold down Control and then I left click my mouse and just move it, I can rotate around, and what I'm seeing is the Google Earth 3D. It's kind of messy, but it's a approximate geometry created from satellite imagery. Um, there is a way using some software to actually get this geometry into a model, but it's not clean for high quality renderings. Maybe in the background it's okay, but I still don't like it because it has all the trees and they're messy. And if you want to put nice trees and nice plants and do everything clean and for a high quality animation, you're gonna have to end up deleting and redoing almost all of it. So there's a certain way that I do it. I bring it in a smooth uh, terrain, but I still get all of the elevations, so all the slope, and then you can model the roads and sidewalks and buildings in a more clean way from the images. I'm going to show you how to do that. So we're actually going to start in SketchUp. So I'm going to minimize that, open up SketchUp, and there's a terrain import tool in SketchUp. So um, we're going to start importing from that. So here I'm in SketchUp. There's a toolbar that I've added to my list here. And if you want to add that and you don't have it yet in your SketchUp, you can go to View, Toolbars, and then find where it says Location and just make sure that's turned on. And then click this button, Import Geometry from Location. And then let's pull this open a little bit wider, and then I'll just search for Lombard Street. Okay, it's not exactly in the right spot. Um, it's around here somewhere. Ooh. Let me go. So if I open up my Google Maps, I can more easily locate it. So if I find this round stadium here or this park there, and then go back into SketchUp, I can see, okay, there's the park. So this is the street that I'm looking for, the one that winds a lot. So what I want to do is I'm going to grab this iconic winding Lombard street, but also the six blocks that are surrounding it. So I can, if I was going to do a rendering or an animation of it, I have a context so it doesn't look blank around it. So the first thing I'm going to do is click select region over here, and then I'm going to make sure that I have the area, the entire area that I want to get inside this box, and then that will give me my 3D outline, and then I'm going to zoom in and take more detailed shots of it. So let's start with that and click import. Okay, so it looks flat, and you're thinking, what? I thought it had lots of slope, and it does. So what you have to do is you have to go into the tabs window, which in previous versions of SketchUp it's called um, the layers or something else other than tags. I think it's layers, but anyway, so you'll see two different layers or tags, so to speak. One is the location snapshot, one's the location terrain. So turn off the snapshot visibility, the eyeball, turn on the terrain. So now we can see the slope. So now it's starting to look a little bit better. I'm going to turn up, go into shadows and just turn up the brightness of the scene a little bit and my shadows tab. Okay, so now if I click on view hidden geometry, I can see the triangles that it's made. And I could just say, okay, I'm just gonna go with this and just, start making my project because I think it's good enough. And it may be, depending on what you're trying to do and how detailed you're trying to get, but um when you're zoomed all the way out and you grab a huge chunk like this, it's not going to be as accurate. So what I like to do is start with this, but then zoom in the do more imports and get a little bit closer. So I'm going to click import geometry again, select region, but I'm going to make it smaller this time. So I'm going to do, what I'll do is probably just I'll do six different smaller chunks. So I'm going to do one block chunks. So I'm going to make sure the whole block is in there and then see how much resolution we get. So click import. So see how it's a lot higher resolution? It's about double the resolution. So if I, now you see when I click on these objects, they're red and they usually are blue, so they're locked. So I just have to right click on them and unlock. Then I can double click on that and I can delete, just select these triangles and hit the delete on the keyboard and just delete the ones I don't want because they're just kind of in the way because that's just that first one was just a rough outline of my area. Now I want to see things in higher detail. I'm going to turn off shadows. So as you can see, it's a little more higher definition, and I like this a little better because this definition is a little bit chunky for me, but it's up to you. I'm just going to show you how I do it. So I'm for now, I'm just going to go ahead and delete this because I don't need it anymore. Now I'm going to import all six blocks. So click select region, move my window in a little bit and then just go from block to block. Okay, there's that one, and it will import in the correct position as well. So do that 4 more times, one for each block. So now what I want to do is I want to select all of these and right click and unlock them. And what I'm going to do is delete the areas where they overlap, because I want to connect them together. So I can see there's an overlap here. I'm going to select those spaces, delete them, and then I'm just going to make do that to all of the areas that overlap. Just delete any overlapping. Probably deleted too much. Overdid it a little bit, but that's what the undo button is for, right? So it's coming along. So I want to just get these lined up pretty good with a little space in between each one, and then I'll stitch them back together. So now that they're not touching, I'm gonna select all of them, right click and say explode so that there's no more groups. They're all just all on height. So I'll go view, hidden geometry, just so I can see what's going on here. I'm gonna go to style, edit style, and then at the end one, and just turn off model axis so it's out of our way. I'm also going to turn off the sky just so it's not distracting me from the model. So yeah, we if we turn on view hidden geometry, we can see it's a higher resolution. So when things are more defined like this, it's not perfect. Like this, obviously, these tennis courts should be flat. So that's something that we'd have to edit, but that's not our main focus. Our main focus is down here. So I'm just gonna happy with that definition as a backdrop to our main focus, which is here. So let's save this right now. Let's right click, update our view so that we can always go back to that same view. Save this as Lombard Street. Okay, so I'm gonna just round off these edges a little bit using the eraser tool. Um, I have a hotkey for it, but you can find it tools, uh, eraser. I'm just gonna kind of round off. triple click that and just kind of square off these edges a little bit because the site isn't perfectly square with the north angle of the rotation of the Earth, so it's making it a little bit difficult on us, but that's part of life. Let's call that good for now. So now at this point, what I want to do is stitch in these areas here. So I'm going to turn off, go to view, turn off hidden geometry. I'm going to double click this, right click, actually double click or triple click, click on, I'm going to have to add something to this. So go into my window, default tray and turn on soften edges. And then I'm going to hit soften coplanar. So what that does is if I turn this to 0, all of my triangle edges will show up, but I don't want that. I want just the outline. So if I turn it up, the outline will show up as a dark line. It's hard to see, but here it's not showing up. So I'm going to do that to all of the surfaces so I can get my dark lines back. Okay, I've got them back. Now, the next thing I want to do is draw a line with a pencil tool. So, tools. Um, I have a hotkey for it, but if I pull up my um, large tool set, you can see I got the pencil tool here. So I want to connect these edges together so that each of the openings is just one strip and not a big maze. And then I'm going to use the sandbox tools to just fill it in. But if I do it all at once, it'll make it kind of a mess. So I'm going to do it one strip at a time. Okay, so let's start with selecting all of the edges of this strip here. And if you have extra ones, you have to hold down Control Shift and you can deselect what you don't need. Go to Sandbox Tools, and if you don't have it on your toolbar, just go to View Toolbars and make sure Sandbox Tools is there, and then click Create Surface from Contours. That's the first button on the Sandbox tool. So now I just created that extra surface that wasn't there before, and I fill this in between the surfaces from the Google Earth import button. And I'm just going to keep doing this until they're all filled in. Make sure you don't have any extra edges selected because that will make it really messy. They'll have a lot of overlap, and that's not good. I didn't close this, but it should be okay without it. It'll do it. See, now I see there's a little bit of overlap. So if I double click here and then go to view, turn on hidden geometry, go to my eraser tool, I can delete that little extra overlap because of that curved surface there. I don't want any overlap. That will be, I can see there's even an overlap right here. That will be a major hassle later when I want to edit things. You want to keep your model clean and tidy so that when you go to do changes, it's really, you don't have a lot of headaches. Last one. It's a little bit of overlap. I have to clean up. Think that's it. That looks good. Okay. So now that I filled that in, I'm going to select everything and then those groups that the sandbox tool created, I'm just going to right click and explode. So explode everything into one surface. Okay. So, um, obviously the image doesn't flow over those gaps now, but also the image is very blurry. So if I zoom in and I can barely even make out where the sidewalk is and where the road is, and everything's very blurry coming from that Google import, Earth import tool. So what I like to do is I like to grab those images in a clearer way from Google Maps and just overlay it back onto the surface. It's the same stuff, but I can get a higher resolution. And also, I'm going to show you some tricks to reduce that blur and get more crisp images that we can trace and we can make a nice model for animating purposes or some nice renders. Also, I'm not going to go into it right now, but I would I would like to if I was going to spend more time, I would fill these in a little bit more so that they're a little bit more smooth on the edges and there's not these triangles kind of sticking out of the edges like that. And then I could go to the eraser tool, hold down control, and just soften these edges up. Um, but for now, I can triple click this whole surface and then go back to my soften edges tool and then just double click soften coplanar, and then it'll soften the whole thing into one image. Or into one surface where the light, rolls off of it smoothly. It's hard to see, but if I mess with the shadows a little bit, and let's say I go into this mode, untextured mode, you could see it a little better. Can't see it in that mode, but so we got a nice medium, not super high resolution terrain, but medium resolution, which is pretty good. Without paying for some. It depends on if you the client, whoever you're doing the project for, or it's for yourself. If they need higher resolution than this, you're going to end up having to pay for some consulting services to get some really high resolution aerial 3D scans. But this is free, so you just click into it from the Google import tool in SketchUp, the location import. So next, we have to bring in higher resolution images so that we can get a lot better image quality on this 3D surface that we have. So let's save this and then come back into Google Maps, and we'll see when I zoom in on Google Maps, I can get nice crisp images from this. I might go out, just a little bit, probably right there. And also, I want to correct the angle just a little bit. Like if I click on this button right down here in the right corner, it will align me directly to the north angle, the correct north angle. So I don't want that though. I want to line up more straight like this. I'm going to cheat it just a little bit. So if I hold down control and I click the left mouse button, I can rotate the Google Earth 3D model a little bit in Google Maps so that the buildings are squared off and the roads are squared off. It's going to make it a lot easier to model things. And it's just cheated a little bit, not enough to notice, but you once your modeling is all done, you can always re-rotate the model a little bit. Or actually, we probably will rotate the model and cheat it just so because when you're modeling buildings and they're all squared off, if you keep the correct rotation, which is like 6.5 degrees off of being square, it's just going to make your life a lot more difficult. So I suggest cheating everything straight in the image collection here and in the 3D model. And then when it's all modeled and all done, you can just go ahead and rotate it back if you want it to be perfectly aligned with the real world north angle. Okay, so we're going to start taking snapshots of this and then bringing them into Photoshop, just like this. So I'm going to do a print screen and then just open up Photoshop and start copying or start pasting those print screens into Photoshop. This is you know, it takes a little bit of time to do this, but the only other alternative is if you can find a consulting company that will sell you super high resolution imagery from straight down on this area, but this way you don't have to pay for it. It's just a snapshot from Google Maps and just to help you get your model in place. So I'm gonna click the crop button and just make this a lot bigger. I'm gonna change this background to white and let's make this bigger to kind of fill up my screen here. And then I also want to um, just cut off these extra edges um, of the browser window so that I can just see the aerial image. And then I'll go back, back over to Google Maps, and then I'll just scroll the screen straight down and I'll take another snapshot. Just print screen on the keyboard. The way my print screen works is I click function and then F12, but your keyboard may be different. I don't know if they're all the same now or not. And then just delete the parts of the browser that we don't need. And then just align this up with the top image so that the edges of the objects up there are aligning. I'm going to turn the opacity of this layer down a little bit so I can see how well they're lining up like this. Okay, that looks pretty good. Turn the opacity back up to 100, and then I can use my eraser tool, make it soft, and make it a little bigger, and then I can just blend these two images together so that the edges aren't so hard. So I don't want to do too much. Okay. Actually, I'm gonna redo that because what happens is if I go too far all at once, the 3D perspective looking down from above, it gets a different angle too much that the buildings don't line up very well. So I'm only gonna go half as far, and yet it'll take a little bit longer to take the snapshots, but you'll see the buildings will line up a lot better if I don't go so far so fast. And yeah, it takes a few minutes longer, but if you don't have patience, you probably shouldn't be working on a 3D project because it takes time to get things to look right in a 3D project. And if you have worked in 3D a lot, I'm sure you know that by now. So, and what I say is it's better to take a few extra minutes in the beginning of a project to get things to line up more correctly. Maybe not 100% perfect, but 90 to 95%. Um, and then it'll make your life easier later on. So you're not wondering like, why aren't things lining up the way they're supposed to? So, and it's still approximating a lot of stuff. Um, but it's good enough for what we're doing here. The only building that's not really lining up very well is this white one right here. So I'm gonna kind of just grab the outline of this building on the top and copy and paste it over the top of that one just to because it's a taller building, so we're kind of losing a little bit of the connection. It's a perspective thing. There is a way we might be able to get around it, but usually there's like a 2D, 3D option, but there isn't one on this because if I click 3D, if I click 2D, it doesn't do anything different. Now, here's what I was thinking of. If I click uncheck globe view, it has just uh, a straight satellite view. It doesn't have the 3D aspect to it, but there's a couple things I don't like about this. One is it's more blurry because it's not using multiple high-res satellite images. It's just using one that isn't very high-res. And you can't rotate it and cheat it to be squared off. So I don't think it's better. You may disagree with me. I like doing it this way. I think it's higher resolution and you just have to deal with the perspective issue a little bit. It's a little bit touchy, but I'm just gonna merge down these layers. Uh, so then I would just go and collect the rest of these images and print screen them and paste them into Photoshop. There's also the option to see if what the images look like in Bing instead of Google Maps. There's a Bing Maps. Um, Sometimes it looks good, but most of the time it's not very good resolution. And since the slope, this area has such a steep slope, the perspective is much more uh, intrusive than normally when there isn't such a steep slope. The flatter the ground is, the easier it is to overlay these images. But you just kind of gotta make it work the best you can. But yeah, it's very steep. It's making it very difficult to align them. I'm gonna go and just real quick check out what the images look like on Bing Maps. So if I go Bing Maps and then I search for Lombard Street, and then I'll do the same thing where I'll turn on the aerial imagery, zoom in, and then I need to turn off labels, just like we did before, although they're not turning on, which is frustrating. They're still there. I think if I X out of the search, that might help a little bit, but I can still see these ghost roads. I don't, I don't want any of that stuff. Yeah, this is not, it's not disappearing. But even so, I'm not going to use this because the resolution is so low. I mean, I cannot zoom in any more than this. That's the resolution is terrible. I would never use the resolution. This is worse resolution than in the regular import tool from uh, Google Earth into Sketchup. As bad as this is, it's still better than being. Every area is different, uses different maps, but San Francisco should be much more high res than this. They really just neglected it. Um, so let's just keep going with this method, as imperfect as it is. It's our best bet for right now. It's just kind of um, it's the best way I know how to do it, to do this with a decent resolution in 3D with the proper 3D terrain geometry for free without paying another company for high res maps. So I did not get the new image. That's the exact same image I was already using. So let's try to do that again. I must have hit the wrong button. Okay, this should be the new print screen. Yes. So I'm going to just skip ahead so you don't have to watch me do this whole thing because it's kind of, you get the point. Okay, so I've imported all of the screenshots from Google Maps, looking straight down from different spots. So this is an image, and then I just kept going back and forth until it was one cohesive image. Now, I could just bring this in as one whole image into SketchUp and then overlay it so that it looks nicer on our model. But I'm not going to do that because what happens is if you bring in an image, a 2D image that's too large of an area, um, it starts to get blurry. What happens is 3D programs apply a filter to 2D images that you bring in called MIP mapping. And what that does, it helps with two different things. It does kind of like an anti-alias to the 2D images so that it doesn't have such a strong pixel sharpness. Because if you're zoomed in, you can see the pixels are jagged, they're aliased. So the MIP mapping smooths it out and also helps the software to run faster and smoother. So but if the image is too large, it gets blurry and you can't see the definition. And when you're trying to trace your image to make the 3D model more accurate and look good, it doesn't work very good in my experience. So what I'm going to do is I usually slice this image into different smaller images. So the way this is looking, it looks like about six sections of the image would look good. So I want six, and I also have experimented for many years about how many pixels the images should be. And the image that always works best is 4,000 by 4,000 pixels for each image. So I want to go into image canvas size. And well, actually, first I'll go to image size, and then make sure this link is checked so that it stays in perspective. And I'm going to resample it. So I want this to be 4,000 times 3, which is 12,000 pixels wide. So I'm just going to type in 12,000 and hit uh, actually, but I want it to be 3 inches as well. So I'll go to inches. So width 3 inches, but resolution 4,000 pixels per inch. And that's so I can snap each inch of the image easier for exporting. So this is what works. So image inches, width 3, resolution 4,000. Say OK. So that will make the total resolution 12,000 pixels. And then I'll go to image canvas size. And then I'm going to do, instead, for the height, I'm going to do 8,000 pixels high. So that it's going to be 2 blocks high by 3 blocks wide. And say, okay. So now if I go to view and I say show all, and then I go to view snap to all, so you can see there's a grid. So I can see that this I want to go 4 grid over and 4 grid down, and it will snap. So I've got one image, two, three, four, five, six. So I could easily snap my selection tool to this grid, and then I'll go image, crop. Well, first let me save it. I'll just save this image as a Photoshop file. Now I'm going to export each individual block as a JPEG. So I'll go image, crop, and I'll save as, and then JPEG, and then I'll just start saving in sequence. I usually do a quality of 9 that compresses it a little bit, but still doesn't lose any visible definition in the image. Then I'm going to go to my history tab and then go up. So basically undo the last function. And then I'm going to move the selection over, snap it to the second block, and crop it, and then save this out for each of the 6 blocks. I'll save this as the second, as O2 JPEG, undo, snap it to the third block, and then just do this for all six. And you might wonder what's the right amount of blocks. It just you have to kind of visually experiment with it and see if you have a very, very large area, you may need to do like 12 blocks or 16 blocks. That's if it's really large, like a city. But if it's a smaller area, you might do six or four. You just got to experiment and see what looks good. And you'll start to get the hang of it, of what resolution for which area you're doing. But usually this is about what I like to do. One city block would be one JPEG. So that's the last of the six JPEG images, and I'll just close that. Now I go into my SketchUp model, and I'm going to find my JPEG images I just saved out. I'll just put these older files in there. Um, Sort by name. So I'll bring in the first one. Oops. Drag it in from the Windows Explorer into SketchUp. I'm going to scale it down. It doesn't have to be perfect yet because I'm going to line it up a little bit later. So what I want to do is for my next images, I can just match the same size because I know that all of these images are going to be the same size in 3D because they're the same size in Photoshop. So when I can move it, snap the corners, and then scale it and just snap it to the same size. So all six are the same, and then move it over, and I'll do that for each. Okay, I've got all six images in there lined up in the same size. What I'm going to do is I'm going to select all of them and right click, say explode. So that's going to make them all into textures. And then I'm going to select all of these surfaces and right click and say make group. Now I'm going to raise it up and bring it over, hover over the 3D model. And I'm going to rotate this 3D model. So I'm going to triple click to select it all, right click, make group. And then I'm going to go into the views, top view, turn on X-ray mode in my styles tab. And then this is the views tab. I'm going to go and click camera. And instead of perspective, I'm going to turn on parallel projection. That will make everything be straight down. So I'm going to select this 3D model. I'm going to cheat it and rotate it just a little bit so that um, I can get it to be the roads are straight up and down instead of just a little bit off like they were. Let me move this out of the way just for a minute, just for a second here until I'm done rotating this model, cheating it. So I want to line up the roads and the buildings so that they're parallel with my 3D world. That'll make it easy to model. Now, since I already did that in Photoshop, I should be able to line these up. Now, I don't want to scale the 3D model because it came in at approximately the right scale, and it may not be 100% perfect. One way to check that is like if you know exactly how big a tennis court should be, you could measure the tennis court and then you could adjust the model a little bit. But I'm going to assume that it came in at about the right scale. So I'm just going to match up the scale of the Photoshop images to the 3D model that came in. Might be a little bit tricky, might not line up 100% perfect, but um, we're going to get it the best we can here. Let's see. Okay, so that. So the main thing we want to line up is this middle part. That's the most important part. The other parts might be a little bit, might not line up perfectly, but the middle is what we want to focus on. Wherever the focus of our animation or renderings are, that's the more important part. Okay, that's lined up pretty good with the model. So now I'm going to turn off X-ray mode. Now, all these textures are obsolete because I'm going to replace them with the nicer textures. You can see the difference. I'm going to turn perspective mode on. So you can see how nice and clear these images are. You can see the steps here going up the hill. And the ones that came in from the SketchUp import are really blurry. It's hard to make out any details. Here, it's much better from our Photoshop files. You can read the letters. So if it depends on how detailed you want to get in your model, you could make the letters. It all depends on where your focus is at, how much detail you want to put in your model. But I like to get these images overlaid. That makes it look nicer. This looks like it's from a telephone pole from the 3D satellite image, but I'm not concerned too much about that area. This is the main area. So we got nice images of the main area. Then we have the actual terrain, the actual slope. Now we have to merge the two. So first, I'm just going to delete not the geometry, but the textures. So these textures that came in, I can just go in the Materials tab, right click, and delete them because I don't need them anymore. They're just making my scene bigger for no reason. I'm totally done with them. I just want these 6 images that I brought in. So let me save this now that I have everything lined up the way I like it. One thing to do is I'll show you after I save this. Save it as a new version number so I don't, if I mess things up, I can always go back to another version of the file. So I'm going to select everything, right click, and explode it, and just do it one more time. Make sure, okay, so the explode is grayed out, so I know everything's fully exploded. I can apply just the basic material to the underside of there so I can see it better. Now, what I want to do is I want to grab this and move, but hold down Control so I get a copy of it. And then hold down Shift to move a copy straight down to right about there. And then I'm going to make that a group. Um, I'll right click, make that a group, and then go into tabs. And I don't need this snapshot. I can delete this tab or this tag, but say assign to another untag. So it'll just go untagged is the main. It used to be called layer 0, but now it's called untagged tag. But it's the exact same thing. But someone thought they needed to rename it. So, but also, if I turn on this, this is the old images, flat images that came in, but they're locked because they're red when I select them. So I need to right click, unlock, and then just hit delete on the keyboard and do that to all of these to get rid of them. Okay, and now I can delete this tag because it's empty. And now I'm going to create a new tag and just select this and go to entity info in my tray where it says tag, assign it to that new tag, and then turn the visibility off. So I'm going to save that for later. So now actually I can just apply the basic material to all of this because I'm just going to use these to slice the cutout of my model. So if I turn on the visibility of this tag, you can see we got our images down there lined up correctly, and we can use those later to model the buildings or the roads or whatever we want to model, sidewalks. Um, so let's save it before we do this because this is the part that's memory intensive and it could crash the computer. So let's just save. And one thing I like to do is I like to delete any unused objects in the scene. So how do you do that? Is you go to Window, Model Info, and then you go to Statistics, and then you click here Purge Unused, and you click that. And what that does is it cleans out anything that's in your model, like textures, groups, components, geometry, lines, anything that you've deleted out of the scene, but it's still in the file in the background and it's taking up memory. So I want it to be clean, as clean as possible, um, so that we can have all our memory just doing this next operation because it's very intensive. I mean, it's not too bad. This geometry isn't the most dense of geometry I've ever worked with, but you never know. You just want to have a clean model. So again, before I do a big operation, I like to clean the model, go to Window, Model Info, Statistics, and then Purge Unused. And then we'll save it again. Now what I want to do is go to Push Pull, and I'm going to hold down Control, Push Pull a copy. So I'm going to create a cube that goes down like this and intersects with it. And then if I just hold down, if I just double click, it will do that same thing to all of these six surfaces and turning them into cubes. And so now if I delete this, you can see it's intersecting with the model the way I want it to. So I'm just going to select all of this and then right click and say intersect faces with selection. And that's going to slice my 3D terrain model in the exact place of these images. Now I can select the tops and hit delete, and then select the bottoms, hit delete. So now I made a patchwork quilt out of our terrain model. I'll turn back on the tag that has our images in that group. Then I'll go to materials window, click on the eyedropper, and then eyedropper this section, and then click up here, and then eyedropper, and do that for all six images. And then this little piece down here, I'm just gonna make that a group, double click, make group, and just delete it because it's unnecessary. And then if I was gonna take more time, I would clean up this edge, make it look straighter, but I'm just gonna leave it for now. You understand like what I would do if I wanted to take more time to make it look nice around the edges. So now we've got a pretty accurate um, 3D model of our site with all the proper slopes from Google Earth. And we also have a fairly detailed uh, images for our textures. So it's looking really nice. This is how I like to work. So the next step would be actually literally modeling the roads, and then the last step would be modeling the buildings. So I'm going to show you how to do that. So we're going to um, triple click this geometry, right click, make group, and then we'll do the same thing. We'll make a new tag, and then we'll just go to entity info, put that, in the new tag so we can so that the terrain model and our image plane are on different tags. So now I just have the image planes that are flat, and I'm actually going to delete the tag, but leave it, have it assigned to the untagged layer, and then right click and explode it. So now I can work on it from here. I'm going to save. Now I'm going to go into my styles tab and click X-ray to go into X-ray mode. And this is the mode I like to trace images in. So I'm going to come at it from a top view. And so, for example, um, I would start tracing these buildings so that I could extrude them up. I'm going to do one building just as an example. I'll do this one right here, just really simple trace of this building. And then the road, I will model just up to here and just trace the road. I'm not going to do the sidewalk right now. So do an arc for this part. And then just use the pencil tool to trace it. So I'm just using pencil and arc to do this tracing. And when I type in, hit my arc tool, and then down here, I can change how many sides. So the default is 12 when you do the arc tool, but that if for really big arcs, it gets chunky because there's only 12 sides. And you can really see it doesn't look like a curve the right way. So I'm gonna undo that. So when I click over to my arc, I can type in how many sides I want to have. So I want to have 40 sides. I type in 40, enter. Then now when I draw this arc, it will have 40 sides instead of 12, and it will be much smoother. And you have to zoom in a lot farther to see the sections. You could do 60, you could do 80, but you don't want to overdo it. You want just enough that it looks good, but if you do too many, you're going to end up making your model overly complex and it's going to be hard to edit later. So just enough that it looks good, no more, no less. I'm not going to model all the sidewalks. I'm just going to model this road just as an example. Actually, this is while we're here. Oops. Okay, so I outlined the road. So, and in the real project, I wouldn't keep going and make all the roads. I mean, at this point, it actually would be pretty easy. I just extend this line out. There's no reason why I shouldn't do this. It'll only take a few seconds. And then obviously we're gonna have, if we want the road here, I'm not gonna make it perfect, just approximated that. And then I'll use the eraser tool and just delete this excess stuff up here. Need that. Okay, so we'll do um, the road shape and then um, actually I'm not gonna do this outside part for now. I'm not gonna mess with it. I'll just do this much. So the key is that you want to draw your geometry on the flat surface and then extrude it up to the sloped terrain later. So let's go out of X-ray mode now that we're done tracing and we'll save it. And now I don't want to delete this or mess it up. So I'm going to just select it and hold down control, move a copy up here. And then do that same thing where I just select it, right click, make group, and then put it on a new tag to keep it separate. And then unhide the tag that has our terrain model, explode it. Well, I'll delete this tag, keep it on unassigned, right click, explode. And now for this, I'm gonna get rid of these textures. I'm just gonna put the basic material on it so I can see it better. But I'm gonna leave the textures on the terrain for now. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna use my eraser tool and erase the parts of this that we don't need for this for the road or our building. These are just extra surfaces that are in our way for this part. Okay, so let's start with the building. So we'll just use the push-pull tool to make it to give some extrusion to it. And I think these are at different layer levels. Triple click it, right click, make group, and then just move it down, straight down, hold down shift to move it straight down into place there. And now to get the right height, the easiest way to do it is to go into Google Maps and just hold down Control and move the mouse and left mouse button move. And we can see that this is the building right here that we're working on. So we just want to match that height. So it looks like uh, the front of it has 1, 2, 3, 4 stories high, but over here it's only 3 stories high. And in general, a story is 11 or 12 feet high each story. So, for example, this whole thing should be about 44 to 50 feet tall. So let's just draw a pencil line from here to the bottom. And right now it's at 40 foot 11 inches, so it needs to be a little bit taller. We can just scale it up a little like that. And that looks pretty close to what it is in Google Maps. Yeah, I think um, that's pretty good. I think the proportions look about right, maybe just a little bit higher. Okay, and then I'll double click inside here and use the eraser tool to erase any extra lines that we don't need, just to keep the model clean. Okay, so that's how, and you could do that to all the buildings that are in your scene so that you trace them in 2D and then extrude them into 3D. And then they're accurately in the model. And then you could go in if you have a rendered view like this and you want to add more detail, you could go into here in Google Maps, go to Street View, grab your little person and stand at the view where you have your render, and then you could start adding more detail in the buildings if you needed to, and you can see what types of trees are in here. So when you're in your rendering software, you can add the appropriate trees that are in the real world. So we got that building, so you could do that to all the buildings. Now let's apply the road. Let's just put that building on its own layer, its own tag, and hide it for now. So now we have the road and our terrain. So we want to do the same thing um, with the road, but we're going to extrude it like when we cut out these image slices. We're going to do that with the road. But first, we're going to add the curb to this road. So let's save it, a version right now. And now the curb should be 6 inches. That's a normal size of curve. So I'm going to use the offset tool right here and then click and drag and then type in 6, enter. So that gives us a nice 6-inch curve. Then we're going to do the storm drain, which is kind of sometimes it makes it look nicer, and it also helps to channel the water away from the road. So it just gives it more definition in the model as well. And it may not be exactly the way it is in the model. You can always change it, the thickness, or change the materials later. But just as an example, this is how I usually do it. Um, for for now, I'm going to take these and just select them and move them out, extend them past the model so that the road just extends straight out. And do the same thing for these for now. So, and I also want to keep a copy of this, so I'm going to move a copy down, and I'll show you why later. But for now, let's just extrude this, hold down Control, extrude, and make a cube surface of that. And then we also have to do it to our other two thinner surfaces. So double click and then double click for the 6-inch curve. Okay, now we have all these surfaces all lined up inside here that are going to um, cut out our road and our curve. So before we do this is going to be a much more intense operation. So we're going to save it in case it crashes. So select all of this, right click, intersect faces with selection. And it's going to take longer than before because we have a lot of different curved surfaces and there's a lot of different sections that are trying to cut out of each other. It shouldn't take too long. But I'll skip ahead. I'll let you know how long it takes. Okay, yeah, it only took about 10 more seconds. So overall, about a minute to compute that cutout. So do the same thing. Select the tops, hit delete on the keyboard. Select the bottoms, hit delete on the keyboard. So now this is cut out. Um, there's a couple places I could see it messed up a little bit, and that will happen once in a while. But for the most part, like this one, I could see it worked just fine. So most of them worked fine. But I can see if I turn on hidden geometry for some reason, I'll save it. So in case it crashes, but I could just use the pencil tool just to complete any lines that it didn't finish correctly. And then just kind of check up on the model. See there, it didn't do everything properly, so I have to find out where it got stuck. I don't see it right right away. It should be somewhere in here. Let's turn on hidden geometry. Oh, yeah, I see it's right here. So turning on hidden geometry, I can select each piece separately. So we have two intersections of the model going on now. It's a little more complicated because we have the terrain model with all the slopes that we imported from Google Earth. Now we have our traced road model that's intersecting, but once in a while it gets confused. It gets kind of complex. So what I do is I find the complex area and I'll just hit delete on the keyboard and then I'll use the pencil tool and I can try to fill it in and see where it's messing up. So that one filled in just fine. This one is definitely has an issue somewhere. I'm not sure where, but if I just start to draw in between the surfaces, I think it got so close to this intersection that it didn't know what to do. So what I'm gonna do to fix that, I'm just going to like draw kind of a circle around this intersection and just delete the whole thing and then redraw the surfaces from there. I may do the same thing on this side. I'll just draw kind of a circle out here, delete it. There. Now it should work. So to clean this up, I'll go to view, turn off hidden geometry, and then I can go to my eraser tool and I want to smooth out these lines. So I just hold down control and I see like a white kind of curved surface icon show up above the eraser tool. And now I can smooth out these lines. See if I don't hold control and I just use the eraser tool, it will delete the lines. I don't want to do that. So I'm going to undo, hold down control while I'm erasing the lines, and instead of it deleting the lines, it just smooths out the surface. So it's still a little bit, there was an extra surface in there. I just deleted it. So I think oh, there's another extra surface right there. I'm just going to select it, delete it. Okay, so now it's fixed. So we're good. I'll just go through and just check all the curved surfaces and make sure there's no problem areas like the last one. Yeah, you can't really leave it because it won't render properly. So you want to fix any issues like that. It doesn't happen that often, only when there's a really complex intersection coming together from several different angles. It gets confused with its equation, but it's okay. It almost does everything correctly. You know, nothing's perfect. We just gotta fix it once in a while if it breaks. You break your toy, you don't cry, you just fix it. Okay, I think it looks good now. So now what I'm going to do is I want these curves to be a concrete material. Um, so let me save it. So I'm gonna go to materials and then I'll go to just find a new material, just like a color, just black color for now. Maybe this one. And I'm just gonna paint all of the surfaces that we just cut out. I'm gonna paint them with that new concrete color. So now we're getting some more definition into our model. So it's not just because those images are really there just for our reference. They're not, even though we made them a little bit higher resolution in Photoshop, they're not high enough resolution to do a nice rendering from. So anything that we want to look nice, we have to model it and texture it separately inside of SketchUp and just use the images to for reference. Like, okay, I know there's a tree here, so I can put a tree there, but I'm not gonna leave the image of a tree in the final render. So one thing, I mean, this is looking pretty good, but one thing that really needs to happen to at the very minimum is this road and this gutter edge needs to drop down 6 inches. And that will give it the minimum amount of definition to actually start to look nice in our renderings or our animations. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to save it and then I'm going to select the road and this gutter slab here, the storm drain slab, but not the 6 inch curve. I'm going to leave that. So I'm going to hold down control and just get a selection of all of the roads and all of the storm drains into one selection. Okay, I think I got it now. And so I'm going to right click on it and say make group. Now I'm going to move it straight down and then type 6, enter. So I'm going to drop it down 6 inches. So that is where the road should be. And then the curb steps up 6 inches. So when it rains, the water will run into the drains. But the sidewalks are always up 6 inches above the road surface. So now we want to fill in this surface in between the road, the storm drain, and the gutter, or in the curb, excuse me, right here. And that's not that easy of a task, but there is a way that we can get it mostly to fix itself without us having to draw those surfaces in there. Um, so if I take this surface and um, I delete the everything except just this storm drain. That's what I want to do. Actually, I'm going to delete this outside part, but I'm going to leave the surface, but just delete the lines on the inside. So it may be hard to see exactly or hard to understand what I'm doing right now, but I'm creating a surface that's going to extrude up and attempt to fill that little area um, in between the curb and the storm drain, and then we're going to extrude it up and try to just cut it automatically. Sometimes it works great. Sometimes it doesn't work so great. Sometimes it works like a certain percentage. It all depends on some different things. I'm not exactly sure what things affect it, but I'm hoping it'll be 100% today. And if not, hopefully it'll be better than 0%. That's like the story of my life. I can just triple click these lines if they're not connected to anything. And I can select the entire line and hit delete on the keyboard now that they're detached from the road surface. And I think that's it. So now that's the shape I want. And I'm going to select it and then right click, make it into a group, double click the group, push pull, extrude it up. Now, this is going to attempt to cut and make that surface, but the thing is, I can see because it's not the outer surface. The outer surface is white in my scene, and the under surface is this kind of tan color. So I want to reverse the faces because I want the white part to be facing towards the road and the tan to be facing away from the road. This will make sense in a little bit. So I'm going to double click on this group and I'm just going to select all the faces and right click and say reverse faces. You may not understand exactly. It's weird. I had to get my head wrapped around it at first. It took me years to really like figure out why I had to do that. But um, I'm gonna select all this and explode it all because it's all ready to be extruded. One thing to do to just get the model more clean is right click and say explode curves. Because if the curves are still there, I'm gonna unhide. So I like to explode, unhide, and explode curves, and that gets all the geometry, like any equations that are trying to hold on to math. I want to get rid of it because I just want it to be a clean mesh. I don't want any math to be happening other than just the what you see. So I'm going to save, well, first I'm going to clean the model by going Window, Model Info, Statistics, Purge Unused. So now the model should be clean and the mesh is clean. So File, I'm going to save it and do one last, select everything, right click, intersect faces with selection. And I'm going to skip ahead. Okay, that took about 1 minute to do the function. So I'll get rid of the extra stuff and let's zoom in on it. And you could see all for most of it, it filled it in correctly. And but some spots, oh no, I guess I need to turn my brightness down on my screen. So it filled in most of it. I could see a couple spots it missed, it didn't fill in, but that's not that bad. We might be able to just draw a line with the pencil tool right here and it will just fill in automatically. And it did. So I'm guessing it just messed up on these straight edges because it wanted something here at the end and there wasn't anything there. And so SketchUp said, screw it. If there's no end piece, I'm not making any faces for you today. And then I come back in and I'm like, well, here's your end piece. Please make my faces that I need. And SketchUp is like, okay, fine, I'll make the faces. Have a nice day. You too, SketchUp. You have a nice day too. So now I can go ahead and find my concrete material, go into materials, click the home button, find my concrete, and add the concrete material to this interface that we just made using that little extrude trick. It took me a while to figure that one out, but it works pretty good usually. Uh, Sometimes I don't know if it was a just an older version of SketchUp, but today on this version of SketchUp and this model, it works surprisingly smoothly. I can see there's a little glitch right there. Um, that's just for some reason it smoothed this out. I can just use the pencil tool and just get those back, those edges back. Okay, keep going. Keep going down Lombard Street. back and forth, back and forth. Oh, I'm getting dizzy. Get me off of this roller coaster. Okay, so now the only thing we have left to do for the road is just fill this in with a road material. So something that's more dark gray like that. That might even be a little bit too dark. Okay. So there we have it. Let's turn the tag that has our building on there. And then we still have our tag that has our flat images that we can use to model any of the other buildings or anything else we need. It's better to model it flat and then bring it up to where it belongs and extrude it. So we can just set our view here. Um, right click, update this view. We'll go to our styles. We'll add back in the sky, update the style, and we'll save this. And I'm going to call it good for now. I mean, you could always add in more detail. This is the basic function of bringing in the terrain using the import location tool. We went over how to import a more high-res clean images from Google Maps into Photoshop and then into SketchUp to replace the blurry, faded images that come in automatically when you do the import tool. And then modeling the buildings, modeling the road and the curves and getting the faces to show up and cut out properly. The next thing you could do is you could go into materials, eyedropper this material onto here, and then you could model, draw these white lines, these crosswalk lines, um, to get more detail into the model. It all depends on where your focus is of your renders or your animation, and how much detail will make it really look good. If this is my main view, I would model these crosswalk lines because that gives it a better definition instead of just the flat asphalt. But you don't need to do the detail in everywhere. You got to just focus your detail on what matters for your. That's why you should pick out, okay, where is my focus? If it's always going to be here, then let's put the detail and the time and effort into this area. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and I hope that you have a great time working on your projects and you got something out of this today. Thank you.